the topic for tonight is going to be PhD alignment of expectations that one can have together with one's PhD supervisor. So we are going to talk more about, from the supervisor's point of view, how how do you align what are the different stages of research, from the early stage of your research to the mid stage of your research to the late stage of your research, and how the metamorphosis, as I say, so to say, should happen, starting from you being in the cocoon to the caterpillar to the butterfly, right? And during each one of these stages, how your supervisor actually prepares you so that you move from one stage to the other and you're not stuck at one particular stage, and what are the characteristics of how your supervisor would actually shape you through these stages. And then you need to have that understanding in terms of what is the expectation that you would be having from your supervisor would be having from you, and then how to meet up to those expectations and how to do that change, as you move through those stages. So we are going to talk about the stages tonight. I have very, very special guest for tonight, Professor Atul Negi. He's one of my close friends, so to say. And we are very lucky to have him because he's an extremely busy person, and we are very lucky to have him tonight. So just to give you a little brief about his biography, and I will definitely probe a little bit about how he came into research and his early PhD student life. But just to give you a brief bio, Atul Negi, Professor Atul Negi, is currently the director of Prestige Institute of Engineering and Science, Indore, right?
That was in the past.
Oh, it was in the past. Okay.
Yes.
And he is the chairman of IEEE Hyderabad section, and he is currently a professor at University of Hyderabad. He has been a scientific officer of DRDO, important DRDO projects run at one of the top tier universities in India, ISC Bangalore. And DRDO, for those people who are not from India, happens to be the R&D, government R&D research, primarily defense research lab in India. And he also does a lot of visiting positions. He keeps taking several visiting positions at different places, including IIIT Hyderabad, which is again one of the tier 1 institutes, universities in India. And so that's kind of like to sum him up a little bit, but he's a lot more than what his bio would say. And over to Professor Negi. We want to first know a little bit about where it all started. The kira, the worm of research. How did it happen? Whether it was high school, whether it was undergrad. How did it came into research? Let's hear that story first.
So the answer to that is it's my father, my dad. That is my father, Dr. J.G. Negi.
Mm-hmm.
He did his PhD from IIT Kharagpur. And after that, he did very well. He got the highest science award in our country, that is the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award,
Mm-hmm.
and in geophysics.
Mm-hmm.
So that way I have seen him, while growing up, I'm seeing him doing research and, get recognition for his research work and such kind of things. And so after I completed my master's, by the way, I did my master's at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
So after I did my master's, so then I thought that, okay, I won't be completely educated unless I have done my PhD. So you can say it was something like a compulsion that I would have to do my PhD.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was like a self-inflicted compulsion, or like?
Yes. So it's coming from a family background, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing was there is that I was always thinking of a career in the academic life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
because of that, I know and understand that unless one goes in and as a PhD, you don't have a standing in academic life.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So PhD is
Right.
mandatory. If you want to get into an academic life, think of
That's true.
getting into
Hmm.
teaching. So that is mandatory. There no second thing or that, and the sooner you get that done, the better it is. Okay,
Right. Right.
but let me say that this is not applicable for everyone. PhD is not everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
That's
Right.
the
Right.
first point I would like to say. Yeah.
So let's
So
let's let's expand on that a little bit, because before even we get into like what is to be expected from the supervisor, and and the relationship between the advisor and the student, even to choose the advisor, or even before that to choose a problem and then to choose an advisor. So let's start from there, because you picked up a very important point actually, not because PhD is not everybody's cup of tea, to even
correct,
to detect it.
correct. So we need to understand ourselves. I mean, what is it? See, PhD is a significant. Doing a PhD wouldn't happen in say less than 3 years, or at least on an
Hmm.
average, 4 to 5 years is what any person who does PhD they do consume that kind of years for that. Now, it's a significant part of your life that too in the formative ages. So one should think about that quite carefully. Now, there are so many things that we need to think about that for doing or while doing the PhD. So, should I get more experience in life by working out and working in a job? Okay, sometimes that's a good answer. That I'll come back to
Hmm.
PhD later
Hmm.
on. Let me just sort of know what it's like to work in a job. All right,
Hmm.
and
Hmm. Hmm.
sometimes working in a job is financially better than trying to do a PhD.
Hmm. That's
Okay,
also true.
so that is one option. All right, and if somebody is interested in doing PhD in say management, then they must actually work in
Hmm.
an industry wherever they must have some work experience. Then only they can understand that what's the issues and things like that, and then they
And they
may
might be
try
able to
to do.
choose a very good problem.
And they have some kind of a maturity that they have an understanding what goes on in a workplace, and so then they might think of the problems which take place in a workplace, and therefore they'll be having a better context in which they will be able to think of a problem. Okay, there are some things which I would like to say is that we need to consider financial stability.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, you won't be able to concentrate on your PhD if you are all the time being worried about that whether there is financial stability for yourself or your family. Okay,
Hmm.
now once if we say family, then are you getting married? so
Yes, yes, yes.
so
That's a
no,
very
PhD will
pertinent.
be your first wife.
Hmm.
If you get married, then the spouse is going to feel neglected because PhD will
Hmm.
be your first wife. Okay,
Right.
so those things you
That's
need to consider.
reality.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so emotional stability. Okay, emotional stability is that suppose there is somebody in your family who is extremely sick, but you have to take care of them. Okay, it's not the right time to do PhD because you're really fighting at one front, which is that emotional front. So you won't be able to put in all the things which is required. Okay,
Hmm.
um, another thing which is that some people think of, oh, if I join PhD I'm going to get a scholarship. If you are getting into PhD because you're going to get a scholarship, that's not the right reason.
Right.
And certainly let me say that PhD is not just any degree, because the PhD degree you're trying to contribute through research. Okay, so it's not that you're if somebody was good at writing exams and passing courses and things like
Hmm. Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Okay, just don't extrapolate that to a PhD, because yes, the first year or so in which you have say PhD comprehensives and things like that, you may get through with that, you're writing exams and clearing that and all that. But after that, once it gets to the research and creative aspects, people sometimes don't have an idea that what it means by being able to contribute something creatively. So that is the start of the problems where people get into problem in the PhD, that being able to contribute creatively. That is the after all, in a PhD you have to contribute something creatively. Okay, so that's where PhD is not just another degree. Okay, so these are the main aspects which I would like people to consider,
Right.
that before they get into the PhD, see that you've taken care of these kind of issues.
Assess the situation
Correct, correct. You
properly.
need to assess the situation. Don't be in a compulsion to sort of join it uh, just because you had some urge, or there was some kind of a emotional feeling for that, and have a rational assessment that where you are right now.
Hmm.
Okay, that's my first thought.
And from there, now comes the second part. Once let's say that we have assisted and we are good to go,
Yes,
then comes the supervisor selection part of it. Like, with whom should I be working? And it's kind of like a chicken and egg
yes,
problem to begin with, because you don't know many people right on the
yes,
onset. And I
yes,
have seen many people making that mistake. I have done that same mistake. You just get an admission and then you figure out, like,
yes,
who
yes,
I should be working with,
yes, yes,
right?
yes.
So if you
So
can discuss that a little bit, yeah.
certainly, a very, very valid and interesting point which you raised. That see, um, let's put it like this. These days, with the new UGC regulations in India, once you join a PhD program, the clock is ticking, and
Mm.
I think the limit is 5 years. Within 5 years, you need
Hmm.
to complete an exit. There is no scope for
Hmm.
extensions and things like that nowadays, as used to be much earlier when people were working. So if I remember correctly, there was somebody in Indian Institute of Science who uh, submitted his thesis in 12 years, and it was in 8 volumes, and say maybe
Wow.
it was some maybe 5 or 6 kilos. That is the kind of work people were doing at that time. Okay, but
Gosh.
but these days UGC has you on a tight leash, and one needs to do whatever one can in the uh, time limit of 5 years, and then exit at that, and that too
And in
now.
many places, it's like that. Even if
Yes,
there is not a restriction, but in other countries also, I've seen that
that's true.
the funding will be stopped. You wouldn't
Correct.
get much funding. Yeah.
Yes, the very valid point. Everywhere, if you see in India, these scholarships are only for 5 years. Everywhere. So you have 2 years as a JRF plus 3 years as an SRF. Generally, that is the score. That's the way the scholarships are done. So in 5 years, you have to be out. I mean, there is no scholarship after that. Okay, so funding is gone,
Hmm.
and as funding is gone, so then no, that's I think that's a very heavy motivation to finish and wind up as the
Yeah.
funding is gone.
In a different way. Yes, 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 Professor Negi. In a very different way, it actually helps you to stay focused.
Correct, correct. Yeah. So actually, that is to get back to preparedness. Uh, the preparedness is also a kind of a question related to what we have asked. Suppose I have done a master's project and I got some idea or experience in some domain. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I feel more naturally comfortable to slide into that area for my PhD as well. Okay, so that could be one. Or let us say it is still better case that you got into a job, and while working on the job, you got into some domain where you have acquired certain kind of skills, you have some tools which you have learned and things like that. So that gives you a stronger background. Okay, so uh, I think those students who have built up strong backgrounds, they are in a much more mature state to be able to choose a PhD topic. Okay, now
Right, right.
some people feel like, PhD topic should be, it's like a life and death matter, and you need to choose that topic properly, otherwise your PhD is sunk, you are sunk, there is no scope for you in the life. Sorry, that's not the kind of thing which is there. Okay, many times the PhD degree is a license for you to get into research. So there is one way to look at it like that. But one thing is true, that what 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 you will do during your PhD and you publish during that is going to give you a direction for another part of your career for another 5 to 6 years after you have done your PhD. So then, you do spend some time in looking at it. Okay, so there are two things. One is that what you desire. All right, so say like, I would desire that I would like to be in the India cricketing 11. All right, but then the other point is my ability. I don't have either batting ability or bowling ability. All right, to that level. So in the same way it goes for research, that I might like to have a desire to work in some kind of a fancy field where work is maybe going on currently, but then do I have that kind of ability? All right, say some, you need to know yourself. What are your skills? Okay,
Absolutely,
what are your
absolutely.
strengths? Am I
Yeah.
am I good mathematically? All right, so if I am sound mathematically, okay, but then instead, while I don't like programming, I go into some kind of a research problem where there is a lot of programming involved, say like, some operating systems, device drivers and such kind of thing. So then that's not going to work out. So you need to know your skills, your abilities, and try to see that where you can make the best of it. Now this is where the supervisor also comes into the equation. Now is there something which the supervisor can complement you and help you along in that way? Okay, just you can see that there will be something which the supervisor is providing. All right, but you can't depend on that solely, because in a PhD it
Right.
is, after all, you are working and you are getting the degree. It's not your supervisor. So you can just give the you can get the supervisor to sort of give you certain views and guidance on how to go about it, but you have to do the work yourself. So that, therefore, don't think of any topic or anything which you cannot do or finish off by yourself. Okay, uh,
Right.
so therefore, it may be something related to what your supervisor had been working on. But then again, it's the thing is that in certain areas of research, things move very fast. So for example, if you take deep learning area, it's moving so fast that hardly anybody in the world is able to keep up with it. No, the number of research papers outpouring is of the
Every
order of
morning,
thousands.
almost.
Okay,
Almost
I
every
don't know
morning you
when
get
it
to
can.
see something.
Sorry.
I'm saying almost every morning you get to, wake up, you get to see some people
That's
out.
true. That's true. No, so there is such an outpouring. Nobody can really even claim to master some part of it. Okay, so and nobody can really claim to be on top of it. So you just need to keep looking at some particular aspect of that. So that is again one more key point for selecting the PhD problem. That select a problem in such a way that you are find out some focus area. Okay, what I have found
Right.
is that a lot of PhD students, they try to bite off more they can chew. If you know that phrase, means they take some very big problem, all right, in a very
Yeah,
general
like a grand
very general
solution.
situation, all right. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they think this is a grand thing, I have to solve this, and like that they take it up. And then as they get into the problem, then they find out that, oh my god, this is something much more than what I bargained for.
Yeah.
Okay, then they start
Yeah.
getting disappointed.
Mm.
Okay, so but that is where you need to be a bit more, less emotional, be more clear headed, and see that what is the problem. Try to take up a smaller aspect of that, a specific instance of that, and see whether you can bring together all your tools, all your research tools, all your abilities, your
Mm-hmm.
things, and then get into that very specific point or
Mm-hmm.
issue, and see whether you
Mm-hmm.
are able to make a dent in that.
Professor Negi, let's try to turn the table at this juncture
Yeah.
and let's look at it from the professor's point of view.
Yes.
So, at this juncture, when you are just very new, you're trying to figure out what problem to pick up and what should be your problem. So, uh, and of course, I cannot generalize supervisors. We cannot generalize supervisors because there are multiple different types of supervisors as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
So, at a very early stage of the PhD student's life, at this stage, what is the expectation of the professor usually? Or we can talk about multiple different categories of professors also, or supervisors
Okay.
at this stage. Yeah.
So if I understand, the question is that uh, how is the supervisor looking at the students?
Hmm.
That's what we would like to get into
At this stage.
at
Yeah,
this
at the
stage.
early stage.
Okay. Now, at the early stage or whatever, see, for example, uh, even at the basic stage itself, why at all would a supervisor want to recruit a student? There are many reasons for that. Amongst
Hmm.
the reasons is that, say, suppose the supervisor himself is at the early stage of his career.
Hmm.
So then, to get a promotion, he needs to be able to recruit a PhD student and should be able to show that he can successfully guide research. So it
Hmm.
is something, maybe it is related to the supervisor's career also, to be able to get
Hmm.
students and successfully guide them.
Absolutely.
That is one perspective. Another perspective would be that, like, let's say uh, the, the supervisor is working on some kind of a funded project.
Funded project.
Yes, and the work is much more than what he himself by himself can accomplish. So in which case then he is going to bring in his students, and it could be sometimes
Hmm.
that the funded project is also giving a funding for the student scholarship and things like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so in which case the problem is getting decided in this way, that
Hmm.
whatever is the funded project problem is going to be
Hmm.
the student's problem.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
that way. And there also the supervisor is going to choose very carefully, because his success and the success of the project is
Hmm.
determining on whether or not this kind of candidate is going to be able to deliver the goods. So
Right.
that's why often we see in those labs where you have funded projects, they are very very choosy in picking up students.
It's
Okay,
almost like a recruitment.
it's like a recruitment. I mean, it is a recruitment. There is no
Hmm.
two ways about it. It is a recruitment.
Hmm.
No? So the candidates' knowledge and their skills, their abilities, more than that, their attitudes. Okay,
Hmm.
what is their work attitude? So you need to get a good. You need to come up with a good work attitude. That's only when then possible for people to get
Hmm.
selected. There may
Right.
be other
Right.
aspects
Right.
of the supervisor, which is that certain supervisors, they are almost like deep in thought, philosopher kind of people, right? And
Yeah.
once they get some illuminating thought or something, then they may express it to their students in a very short terse sentence or so. But now,
Hmm.
if the student is not able to catch that, so
Yeah.
things will be difficult for the student, no? So but then the
Right.
onus is on the student, we will sort of keep company of the supervisor, keep meeting, keep badgering, keep persuading, keep talking, keep discussing,
Right.
trying to find out more and more about that, and understand that what is it that was the vision of the supervisor in taking up
Right.
that problem, and what is the ray of hope which he has found as a solution. Okay,
Right.
and then the student needs to take that and run with that.
Right. 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 Right.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely. I was, I do a lot of research on researchers, and that's part of the job of what we do in RACS, right? And we were studying, certain research that has been done on this sort of the PhD supervisor and student, relationship, pedagogy, styles, and so on. And it has been found that there are like 5, 6 different categories of supervisors, and one we already discussed one kind, who is this funded oriented, the funding oriented. Oh, and over there problems are already almost
Yes,
defined,
yes,
sort of, because it's guided by the funding.
yes,
Then there's this other kind of supervisor, and the other kind of supervisor who are more like, they would allow you to choose a problem, but within a certain perimeter, certain a
yes,
boundary,
yes,
and they don't
yes,
want you to move beyond that boundary,
yes,
right?
yes,
And then there's this third kind of supervisor who are like colleague kind of supervisor, where the supervisor is willing to break any boundary and go to any different kind of problem. So essentially, in that kind of a situation, both the student and the supervisor are, so to say, at the same expertise level, right? I'm not talking about research method point of view. Of course, the supervisor will be a lot more experienced, but more
it's
from
an
the
approach,
problem
it's an
point of.
approach to the
Yeah,
student which the supervisor
right.
has, which is in a more like a elder brotherly mentor kind of fashion.
Right, right,
Right,
right.
right.
And then the fourth category is what you just said, which is the sounding board category. And where it can very well happen in this sort of situation. Then some very philosophical statement, very terse and something, and then you have to pick it up from
Yes,
there,
yes,
right?
yes,
So that's the fourth category, and I unfortunately there's a fifth category also, where the supervisor is more like an administrator job. He
yes,
doesn't
yes,
meddle into what you do,
yes,
and
yes,
he's just.
yes, 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 yes. Actually, unfortunately, that is true. That there are the supervisors who are just administratively, okay, what do you need? You want this signature? Okay, I'll give you this signature, and things like that.
Yeah.
But they are maybe too wrapped up in their own problems and difficulties, in which they can
Hmm.
they will hardly be able to contribute to the student.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
that can be good, it can be bad as well.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
can be good because then there is no interference from the supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you
Yeah.
just do whatever you can.
You're
Huh.
right. Right.
So you
But I think
do,
that alignment and that matchmaking is also
huh,
very much important in terms of what experience the student also has before he
yes,
joins
yes,
the PhD, the
yes,
maturity.
yes, yes, correct. So some students are very self-sufficient.
Hmm.
They no, they have a lot of confidence. They have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
self-confidence. Basically, let's make one point very clear.
Mm-hmm.
You are not getting a PhD unless you have enough self-confidence in the problem which you are taking up, and you must have
Absolutely.
persistence and faith that you are going to get through into that problem. Okay, so
Absolutely.
that is absolutely required. Okay, so so which means that you have the problem, and you found that it is worth investigating, and you commit yourself into that. Okay, so you need to commit yourself into that.
Mm-hmm.
And because
Mm-hmm.
you are going to go into it deep, 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 and work into it for maybe an year or two intensely, then only you are going to
Mm-hmm.
find something there. One of my
Mm-hmm.
teachers at the Indian Institute of Science used to give an analogy. He used to say that you have to dig a well, all right, and get water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I dig 5 feet here, 5 feet there, 5 feet somewhere else, I'm never going to strike water. Okay, so yes,
Yeah.
so that kind of shallowness is not going to help in research. And
Mm-hmm.
it is
Right.
possible that, suppose you dig deep, maybe you didn't find water, but you find some other mineral ore. Maybe you
Yeah.
hit
Or
gold,
maybe petrol.
maybe you hit petrol, maybe you hit diamond. Okay, you don't know what you
Mm.
are going to hit,
It
but you got
happens.
to go deep.
Mm.
Okay, so that is
Right.
what is called as in research as serendipity.
Serendipity. Yes.
Is yeah, serendipity is it is really a wonderful thing that there are so many researchers. Say for example, Louis Pasteur. He is a great person in the name in the biological
Mm-hmm.
bacteriological research, and he always used to say that luck helps the prepared mind.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
so going deep into some topic is you're preparing yourself that you may be able to get to some discovery which nobody else has got to there. But going to that depth is required.
Mm-hmm.
So commitment to the topic, commitment to the problem, getting to the depth of it, that is very much required,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that won't come unless you have a bit of self confidence.
Right.
So somewhere, this is where the role of supervisor comes in.
Hmm.
There may be a supervisor who doesn't have any knowledge about that topic or subject. Okay, but all he does is that he provides emotional support to the student, saying
Hmm.
that, okay, man, you go ahead and you do that. I'm there to help you. Okay, so
Hmm.
that sort of emotional support by the supervisor will just allow the student to really to get deep and explore, so that confidence which is provided by the supervisor, that helps the student to
Hmm.
get into it. Okay, but on the other hand, if all the time the supervisor is sort
Al-
of
Yeah.
berating and saying that,
Hmm.
hey, what have you done? The 2 years are gone, you haven't published any paper. What are you up to? I don't see you coming to the lab and things like that. So then, those kind of things could be a bit, it might be lead to a difficult situation later on.
Right, right. Um, touching upon this last point that you just said, a lot of times what happens is that uh, students go through certain kind of a disillusionment somewhere, in their end of their, let's say, second year or third
Yes,
year or
yes,
something, and
yes,
and that's why we see worldwide, we see that there's a lot of drop off that
yes.
happens during the PhD, and many of these drop-offs have nothing to do with funding or anything. It's just that suddenly you have this realization that A, you have this imposter syndrome always going on within you, and B, you always feel like, hey, this is not my cup of tea, and C, which is kind of more related to our to tonight's topic, is it's not going well with my supervisor somehow,
Yes, yes.
and that feeling that my supervisor doesn't understand me, or I don't understand my supervisor. What does he really expect out of me?
Okay, right. So here I would say is that, get into a habit of having at least weekly meetings and discussions with your
Mm-hmm.
supervisor. Okay, the meetings may be very brief. It may be a 5 minute meeting. It may be 10 minutes meeting, but you need to be able to see each other and have a communication channel open. That's very important. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
see, okay, let's start with the student's expectation. The student's
Mm-hmm.
expectation could be very high. It could be that he is expecting the supervisor to solve his problem. Okay, so that I call it as a spoon feeding. So you don't expect a spoon feeding. Okay, so but that may not happen, because the PhD is coming to you. You need to do something for that at a certain extent on level, by which you will be able to earn that thing yourself. Okay, but
Right.
discussion
Right.
is where you talk about maybe various things. You talk about your personal life. You can talk about your problems and difficulties. Your supervisor should be also acting something like a counselor, and sort of
Mm-hmm.
telling you that, okay, don't worry about it, you will figure out something to solve that.
Yeah.
Or oh, you need a bit of a loan or something to get by for this week or something like that. You will give it back
Mm.
to me once you get your scholarship, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Right. Right.
sometimes it is needed, a bit of support like that might be needed, but no, don't
Absolutely.
expect it, but
Mm.
don't take it for granted, or don't expect it that you are going to get that. You may discuss about literature, what is going on in the literature these days, what are the methods and techniques which
Mm-hmm.
are going on, which are the best current papers
Mm-hmm.
which you have been reading. Okay, or you may talk
Mm-hmm.
about, so that you are trying to do something in the lab, either it's a programming implementation, or this is where the
Mm-hmm.
resources issue comes into the
Mm-hmm.
discussion. Okay, now if there are resources which, if the supervisor could lay his hand or her hands on and provide to the student, sometimes those issues come, and the students getting into
Right.
disillusionment would be sometimes related to this lack of resources issues. Okay, so
Right.
sometimes
Right.
this
Right. It
circumstances are
happens a
such
lot.
that,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. So say for example, where you are working in some wet lab kind of situation. the chemicals which are
Mm.
required are pretty expensive, and there is you're in between some projects and funding, and something is not there, and there's no way you will be able to get those chemicals, and your work is sort of stalled. Okay, so that is
Mm.
a kind of a situation. Realistically, yes, it can happen, but there you need to have faith and think that it's not going to last. That's the important
Mm.
thing to understand, that whatever
Mm.
this
Mm.
situation is, it's not going to last. There is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. That's the important thing to have.
Mm. Mm.
Okay, so
Right.
and it's
Absolutely.
also important for the supervisor to also give the faith and confidence to the student to be able to persevere. Okay,
Yeah.
so that is very important. Okay, but still, despite all that, students do leave the program. Why?
Mm.
What happens is, if you remember earlier, I said that the student is bitten off more than they can chew. What it
Mm.
means is that they also didn't understand the problem domain and what are the resource requirements, rather the knowledge requirements, their own skills which are required to get into that. Okay, then after that they face a disillusionment. Oh, maybe this
Mm.
was not really my cup of tea. So that is when there a bit
Mm.
of willpower is needed to that. Okay,
Mm.
I'm going to sort this out. I may not know enough now, but I'll figure out what I should do, and I will get into it, and I'll get to the bottom of it, and I will find out. Okay, sometimes it also
Mm.
happens that the student is not having enough mental flexibility.
Yeah.
If you know and understand that there is no way you will be able to achieve something. Okay, no, in research, some things are, it's a physical impossibility, or it's there is a mathematical proof that which says that this is not possible, or something like that.
Mm.
You need to
Mm.
realize what is that, and at that stage, once you realize that, you have to have a mental flexibility to be able to reformulate the problem, to put
Right.
a slightly different goal, and things like that. Okay, so that mental flexibility is very much required to be able to
Right.
understand your situation, and to be able to rephrase your problem, to sort of scale down the problem, or whatever. You should be able to realize that that's not happening. You need to do something slightly different. Okay, so that is also very important to have.
And I think those the short interval, a weekly meeting,
Yes,
even for a small time,
yes,
that actually helps you to detect these issues early on.
exactly,
When you are
exactly,
brainstorming and discussing it out.
exactly, exactly.
Just to throw out your thought process. That's it. A
Yes,
lot of times that itself, will trigger that kind of a conversation with your supervisor, where sometimes you would suddenly
yes,
figure out that, well,
yes,
we should
yes, yes,
reformulate the problem.
yes, yes. And Sourish, there is one more thing what
Hmm.
sometimes does happen, is that the student knows more than supervisor.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a fact. At some
Hmm.
stage, students are knowing more than their supervisors, and
Hmm.
the supervisor is telling them to do something else, which according to the student is a disaster.
Yep.
So that is also a situation where possibly the student thinks is very disillusioned, and thinks that, oh, what's the point, and that's where some of them quit. Okay, but it's a very rare case or rare situation. Okay,
Hmm.
but this is where the supervisor shouldn't have that kind of an ego, and saying that, no, I know
Hmm.
more, and whatever I know, and the student will never know enough, and will never know as much as I do. But that's
No, no.
in the fast paced research domains, that is it is very common. It's very much
Very,
possible
very
that
common.
the student is more in tune with the literature and the state of the art, rather
Hmm.
rather than the supervisor themselves. Okay, it's see, no,
Hmm.
it can happen. Certain supervisors, over the years, they are going and more into administrative work, and they
Yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
losing touch with the literature. They don't know
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
progression
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
field. So that's kind of thing is always possible.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. And in the worst case scenario, I always tell this to students that if you are in a very sticky situation, such situations happen, just do both. do your way, do your supervisor's way, come up with a really nice comparison and
Yes,
show,
yes,
okay, so this is this and this is this.
yes, yeah, yes. See, if you have a rational way to convince your supervisor, that's the best thing. That you say that,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you want to have your way, let me try it out, and then you work it out, and then you can show. Of course, it may take a bit of effort, time, etc. It may not be easy to show that, but let me say one thing, that if you are able to do that, you would have certainly learned something more. And comparison in research is always required. The
Right.
your newest latest method is better. How do you prove it unless there is nothing to compare with?
Mm-hmm.
So comparisons are required. So it may be that
Right.
the old method may be maybe to the student looking a total waste of time and money and effort, because he's seeing it, it's obvious to him. It may not be so obvious to the supervisor. So he needs to work on it and show it to the that this is not viable, and that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there is
Right.
one more reason or thing, that don't get into a fight with the supervisor on some kind of
Oh
silly
yeah.
things.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody knows Hindi, they say that पानी में रह करके मगरमच्छ से बैर नहीं.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so while you are in the water, don't have a pick a fight with the crocodile. So the supervisor is the crocodile. Okay, so whatever you have, you just
Yeah.
sort of put your nose down and work it out and see that you get your degree. The reason is that even after that, once you have a research degree at any and every place, it is the supervisor's
Mm-hmm.
recommendation which is always required and asked. The references.
Right.
Okay, so any
Right.
future job which somebody is going to go into, so at least for the first job or so, the references are required from the supervisor.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And one other thing, another aspect to it is that it's a life lesson, in the sense of how to deal with these situations, such
Yes.
situations, because such situations will happen even in your career
Yes. Yes.
ahead.
Correct. 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 Yeah. So basically, here there are two things everyone knows. I'll just say that again. Basically, it is the IQ versus EQ problem. IQ is that, yes, somebody may be extremely intelligent, etc. But if they don't know how to keep a cap on their emotions and feelings, if they're poor at the managing their emotions, that is EQ. Okay, then they may not be able to succeed as much as they think they should because of their IQ.
Hmm. By the way, folks, just keep asking questions. There is a button below called "Ask a Question." If you have questions, you can keep asking questions over there. I'm constantly watching that panel, and I'll take your questions one by one by one. Right? Okay. So so the other thing, that I was kind of wanting to touch upon is that, sometimes what happens is that at an early stage of your research you see a lot more, from there are a certain kind of supervisors who take a lot more care in terms of building a foundation, right?
Yes.
And then suddenly you see that the supervisor is taking that step ahead and leaving you to walk, so to say, like, no, no, I am not going to do this anymore, and you have to now
Yes.
walk.
Yes.
And
Yes.
at
Yes.
that time there's this suddenly, students get to a feeling like, what is happening, he used to be
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yes.
closely guiding me and
Yes.
telling me, okay,
Yes.
read this, read that,
Correct.
and then suddenly
Correct.
what has gone wrong?
Correct. 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 I'll tell you. I'll tell you. So it is like this. Some of my colleagues, they do that actually. What they do is that they push the student, and they come out with their first publication. All
Hmm.
right, and once that publication succeeds, okay, then they just don't do anything. They let it be, and it's up to the student to work for his second publication. That is where some people just collapse in the sense that
Right.
because the supervisor is not egging them on, so their pace of work slacks or whatever, and then after some time they find that, oh, they are not really they are falling behind, and then they get worried and things like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
Right.
saw some question in this chat window.
Yeah, yeah,
Shall
yeah.
I read that out? So it
Yeah,
says
yeah,
that
sure.
as per
Yeah.
the UGC guideline, there is a 10% plagiarism for the PhD thesis report. Okay, whereas softwares do a similarity check, and there are many terms which are similar. So this is asking the opinion on this. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
uh, let us be very critical here. 10% plagiarism doesn't is a very it's a wrong term actually. I can find out similarity. I can find out textual similarity. Okay,
Hmm.
so the textual similarity I can compute to say some degree of accuracy of 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever. But textual similarity and sometimes plagiarism. Textual similarity is a copy paste kind of thing. Okay, the
Right.
plagiarism of copy paste is no that is, but uh, that there are so many levels of things which people can actually, if they want to do wrong things, they can
And
go to.
and which can be defined as plagiarism. There are so many other
Yes,
levels.
yes, 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 yes. Okay, okay. So what UGC is trying to say is that you can't have some similarity of 10%. Actually, what is happening is that if you go into those software which compute these similarity reports, um, sometimes if you are not careful, the references get into that score. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you need to configure that properly to make sure that references and literature etc is, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, don't add to the score. Okay, and say you are writing a review article, you have done literature review. When you do literature review and then the same terms which are there in literature are coming into your text,
Mm-hmm.
so that is going to add to some kind of similarity score.
Yeah, yeah. In
Okay,
review articles, it will happen a lot.
correct, correct. So I mean the UGC has a prescription, but basically what we need to understand is that they don't want people to do copy paste. They want people to respect the copyright of other authors and things like that. And if you cite other people's work, you need to paraphrase, you need to put it into quotes and things like that. And it's not that you're quoting a full page. You can't quote a full page. That's
Mm-hmm.
actually, that is actually plagiarism. Okay, so just you may quote a sentence or two, or maybe a paragraph, but not more than that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so and I mean there is a joke in which it says that suppose you borrow 20% from one paper, that is plagiarism. But if you borrow 1% from 20 papers, that is research. Okay, so basically it is that if you have broad based your borrowing from more number of sources and literature, that is going to be
Mm-hmm.
good research, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way one has to approach it.
Another thing I just want to add on that a little bit, that what I have seen is that if you are writing on your own when you're drafting your paper for submission, most likely you are not going to fall into this,
That's true,
because
that's true,
yeah.
that's true, that's true. I agree, I agree. What I make my students do and all that is that whenever, first thing is that when they read literature and things like that, I say that you look at it and make handwritten notes.
Hmm.
Okay, so when they're doing this handwritten notes thing, so obviously they cannot just do a copy paste kind of activity. They need to read it, they need to understand what it means and put it into their own words.
Hmm.
This is one level of making them to understand what it is, and it is forcing them also to put the things into their own words. Okay, so
Hmm.
when they take their notes and then they try to type it up into a paper and things like that, it is less likely that they're going to do a verbatim kind of a copy paste kind of thing.
Right, 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 right.
Right.
There is a question which
Okay.
is more related to our today's topic: how to make your supervisor realize that you're actually doing your best, even if you don't end with something very exciting. This is from Tehmina. Tehmina is one of our regular visitors from Pakistan.
Okay.
So, okay, we'll touch upon this, Tehmina.
Okay. Okay. So the supervisor thinks you're not doing enough.
Yeah,
Basically, that's
yeah,
the issue.
yeah. Yeah.
It's very difficult now because the expectation of the supervisor may be so much that you might never be able to fulfill that. Okay, but let you can try to quantify it. You may try to quantify it that you could publish some paper in this level of a conference or that level of a journal or something like that. So if you have something like that to show, yes, that may be something which the supervisor can see, and it's like we can't say that you're not doing anything. But okay, like let's say that you should have got into some very high level of journal, or and you're not been able to do that. Then of course one thing you can say is that a good thing takes some time. Okay, so you do need a amount of time to be able to get into that. Say, so you want to win gold medal at the Olympics, you need to practice a lot. Okay,
Yeah.
so just I can't just come up and then start running and get a gold medal in Olympics. Huge amount of practice needed. Okay, other
Mm.
thing is you need to find out that what is it that is uh, the key obstacle or the main obstacle which is
Mm-hmm.
stopping you from going further.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
you need to do some introspection on that. That no, uh, what was it that is stopping you going further? Is it that you are not getting enough time to devote on the key topic? Is it that you are lacking in knowledge, or you are not lacking a resource? Okay, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you need to do what is called as in the situational awareness, called as a SWOT exercise. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. That is the SWOT analysis, and then on your situational issue, you try to analyze with that, and then you might be able to come up with it. What is really stopping you
Right.
from going further or ahead? Okay, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
what happens is that this is where you try to take help from your colleagues, because what I find is that
Yeah.
in research, the interdisciplinary nature of ideas is very much
Absolutely.
required. Okay, so in your group of say, like let's say hostel friends or other some other social groups which are of researchers who are working different fields, maybe slightly related, have some discussions with them, and while you're discussing with them, you might get some bright or different ideas which might
Mm-hmm.
help you along. So that is one of the things which I might suggest.
Right, right.
Yes.
One thing, just to add on to that, a little thing, which a lot of times students don't understand that supervisors also want to hear the bad news
Ah,
and why you are not failing. What is the thought process behind behind whatever you did that led to a failure? And
okay,
supervisors
okay.
want to know that. I mean, Atulji, if you can,
Yes, yes,
just
yes, yes, yes. So, see, let me start with one very basic and fundamental aspect, which is the negative result.
hmm,
Okay, every supervisor is looking for a positive result. Okay, that their pet hypothesis or theory is working, and it's giving a positive result. Now, you are working actually, but you are not getting that. All right. Then
hmm,
what I suggest you should do is that you work very systematically and cover all the angles, and then try to show that there is a negative result. And I'll tell you why. A negative result helps you to stop going into a sterile work approach. Okay,
hmm,
so you if you stop working in that, then you might be able to put your resources and energy into something which is a different tack and approach, and where you might actually succeed. So
hmm,
early realization of that, that there is a negative result coming up. Okay, you must try to systematically find that and present it to your supervisor, so that you can start trying to find some other approach. Okay,
right.
and also this is a bit somewhat rare. You can actually publish negative results.
Hmm,
Okay, so sometimes in the research journals or communities, they don't look at it well, but it is possible, and provided your negative result, you are able to research it very comprehensively, and you're able to
Mm-hmm.
fully describe that what is the issues and what are the problems and why the negative
Mm-hmm.
result is coming. So that can be pretty useful to other researchers
Yeah,
to
and if the
to sort
negative
of
result,
avoid it. Correct,
yeah,
correct, correct.
and if the
Yeah.
negative result is quite counterintuitive, then that can
Yes.
really qualify as a very good paper.
Exactly. Exactly. Excellent. That's right. Very much true.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We now come to the final part, Professor Negi, which is the dynamics when the student is at the final stage when they are just wrapping it up and they're
Yes.
writing their thesis. And many I have had past experiences with our audiences that people ask us this sort of questions that you know should we be writing one chapter at a time and then sending it to our advisor, or should we be writing the entire thing and then send it to our advisor, or how does it work, the revision process and so on, how
Okay.
much should I pester him and so on?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, you are into the thesis writing phase.
Hmm.
Okay, the student is in the thesis writing phase, and how do we proceed there? Okay, so what happens is that first is that don't go into writing into detail. First, work out
Yeah,
a kind of a sketch. So
like a
basically,
blueprint.
I practice that myself. I make my students to come up with a suggestive table of contents.
Hmm.
So the table of contents tells you about the chapter names, their headings, and then I ask them to write the sections, subsections in the chapters. Okay, as an outline. This is the outline of their thesis. Okay, and then do they have, what is the key results which they have? Where are they going to position those things into these chapters? Okay, do they have any kind of a figure or algorithm or picture or a table in those chapters and the sections in that? Where are they going to put that and position that? Okay, so like this, say maybe for a couple of weeks or so, I ask them to work out this total uh, overview of the thesis. Okay, and then the student and the supervisor, they go through that overview, and they try to add more and more detail into that. Okay, so without having to get into correcting text and English and sentences, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
or the
Mm-hmm.
students are trying to spend a lot of time in writing up a good text in English. So then the basic structure, overall
That's so
structure of
important.
the
Yes.
thesis is there. Okay,
Right.
what
Right.
this forces both the supervisor as well as the student to do is that what is it all about? Okay, so what is the
Hmm.
overview which is going to be there? So the basic structure of the thesis is
And what is to
that
be filled where?
yeah,
Right.
is both of them are coming to consensus, they are agreeing to that what it's going to look like. Okay, so
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
you can say that before going to for construction, the architect and the owner of the house are deciding that what it's going to look like, something like that. That's
Yeah.
my
The
analogy.
blueprint.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
once they are in tune with that, then the student can think of proceeding to write chapter by chapter. Okay, and there also I have a suggestion, which is that don't try to write an introduction first. That's the most
Hmm.
difficult thing to
Hmm.
write.
Yeah.
Okay, also, so don't try to attempt the conclusion also. Leave it first. Get into the real core part of your research work, which is your contributions. Okay, so if you can, you write up the core contributions chapters first, give them up to your supervisor one by one, and since you know that you have discussed with your supervisor the roughly what is going to be in them. Okay, so then you fill it up, flesh it out, add in the details and things like that. Make sure you have citing the bibliography and things like that, and you pass it on to the
Hmm.
supervisor. They may polish it up or correct it and give it back to you. Okay, so like this you may be able to proceed chapter by chapter. And the other thing which students often forget to do is that give enough time for writing. So what I have seen is that good writing takes time. So it's very difficult to say just go on writing, just to, oh, I already published the papers. I'm going to copy and paste that into my thesis.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't work,
Yeah.
and that is
Mm.
going to lead to
Mm.
this plagiarism problem, because
Yep.
if you have copied from your research papers into the thesis, and then when you give your thesis for plagiarism detection, it is going to turn up. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
so so that's what happens. All right. uh, in certain, in certain places, the first authored work of the student, that is permitted to be excluded from the uh, plagiarism detection to the extent of 10%. Okay, but even then, it's not going to be a good thing to just, copy paste from your research papers, because the writing is different, the way you express it is also important, and things like that.
Very quite
Yeah,
different even.
so in fact, I also examined a number of PhD theses and all that, and in one particular case, it was found that the student was doing something like that. So every
Mm.
chapter was having so much of repetition. And why was that? It was because it was looking like a
Mm.
copy paste from their research papers.
So the threading of the story is not happening.
So the progression of the work, and half of the chapter is a copy of the, see, because every introduction and everything which is there in a research paper in a particular field will be the same. But when it comes
Right.
to a thesis, you get rid of it in the introduction or in the literature review part, etc., and then you don't talk about it again and again. You concentrate on your
Right.
main work, so that was what was
Main
making
work and.
that thesis to look bad, actually.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
while the research contributions by the candidate were good, but the thesis writing was atrocious, so it had to be sent back for modification
And I think,
and resubmission.
Atulji, your advice on the blueprint thing is so good, because you know what, like that actually sets the tone of not doing that. That stops you from not doing that, because you have a pipeline. You know how exactly one chapter is going to lead to the other next chapter,
Yes,
because of that
yes,
blueprint.
yes, yes, yes. The flow of the thesis is, set up through that.
Hmm. Right.
So
Right.
so
So I yeah.
it helps in the review also. Suppose it's going to an examiner, okay?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it is going to look much more coherent.
Hmm. Right, right. I guess if you have some final last minute questions to put up, this is the time. Otherwise, we are going to wrap up for tonight. Uh, I know Professor Negi has a flight to catch tomorrow, so we have to, and we are quite late. So if if you have some final last questions to ask, this is a good time. Otherwise, if questions pop up later on as well, we have a community on Discord. You can join the Discord community, and if you have specific questions for Atulji, I will be forwarding these questions to you and getting back the answers and giving you back. Right?
Yeah,
So don't
yeah.
worry about it.
Surely.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to know those questions, and I would like to address them. And I think
Right.
so. No,
One
I had a
one
good time
final
so far.
question before.
Yes,
One final question, probably,
yes.
before we leave. This is from Khazar, who is also from Pakistan. The question is, how many publications we should have during our PhD studies?
Ah, so what happens is that all the universities, every university lays down their regulations and say that,
Mm-hmm.
you need to have publications of this level and that level, etc. Okay, so in India, in the science disciplines, they have what is called as the Science Citation Index. So you have what is called as SCI journals. So many universities now in India have laid it down that, you must need to have at least one, or in some of the universities like mine, we have say one in the SCI, and another is the non-SCI or other, but it is a UGC care list of journals which has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that level of publication is required. Okay, it's a very important thing to have that level of publication, to see that your thesis is reviewed properly and not just sent back. Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
the more publications you have and you put it into your thesis, so it is showing that it has already passed a certain level of peer review. Okay, so
Right.
when it
That's true.
passes that
That's true.
level of peer review and you have the set of publications in that, and then when it goes for a review, so then the reviewer is less in a doubt that okay, whether what is the validity of this work and things like that. Okay, and let me say one thing, which is that a number of my students, by the time they submit their thesis, actually not only they have a good number of publications, they have a number of citations also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is a citation? A citation is that somebody else in the research work has cited your research work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that is the very proof that your research work is valid and it is important for other research works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Other people are
so
building on top of it.
yes. So see, what happens is that there is a kind of a reasonably amount of some 4 to 5 months of a time gap once you submit your thesis and then you get the reports and you have a defense. So I ask my students to if they have any citations, to come up with citations and put those citations into their defense.
Mm.
So then it shows the examiner that whatever work has been done has been current, it is valid, it's appreciated, and so that way, so that it makes the defense so much more easier, if they are showing that
Right.
their research work has come up with citations. Okay,
Right.
now to come back to that question, that how many publications, I will say like this, for your own good, that you may have a deadline or time limit by which you need to submit your
Mm.
thesis. Okay, uh, if you have not published anything, and your deadline is there, then don't have any choice. You need to find out that what is level and where you have to publish, and then you have to publish and submit. Okay, but why not think about it right at the beginning? The moment you join your PhD program, you find out that what are the goalposts, and
Mm-hmm.
then try to prepare for that from that moment onwards. Okay, so that is would be my advice, that try to plan it and see what is required, and then work
Mm-hmm.
towards that.
Okay, great. So thank you, Professor Negi, for giving us the time, and it's an honor to have you actually, and I'm so thankful that you agreed to join us. Even though you're currently so busy. And thanks a lot to all of you who have attended, and also those people who would be viewing it later. We wish that you are very safe, very healthy, and taking very good care of yourself and your family. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sourish. I
A
enjoyed
very
myself
yeah,
being with you.
yeah, great,
I hope
great,
it was
great.
useful for all who are listening.
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank
Yeah. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Okay. Good night. Bye.